Hi, Shannon here from houseimprovements.com. Today I'm going to show you how to remove an old door, old interior door, we've got an oak one here, and replace it with a new door and frame of the painted variety. So basically what we're going to do is we'll start out by removing the old door, we'll get it all out of the way, it won't take very long, and then we'll get right into installing the new one. Okay, well, one of the first things you want to be sure that you do is double check your measurements, width and height of the actual opening. So by that I mean have the trim removed off the door, off the frame, and you want to actually try to be measuring right from the wood, the framework of the opening, height and width, and double check that your new frame is going to actually fit that. Ideally you'd like to have your new frame about an inch smaller than what the existing opening is on the width, and about a half an inch on the height. You know, if you're only about a half an inch on the width, we'll make it work. That's what our door here happens to be, but ideally it's nice to have a little bit of playroom there so you can use shims and get everything nice and straight and square. I'm going to begin by removing the doorknob on this door, and then we'll actually remove the door and the frame. So removing the doorknob, really simple. You need the appropriate screwdriver. You're going to find on one side of the door there'll be two screws generally holding the knob together. So you just basically got to turn those out to get them out, and the two halves of the doorknob will come apart. They're fairly long screws because they're made to accommodate different thicknesses of doors. So they take a little bit here to get it out. Come on. We're almost there now. There's one. There's the other one. So you can see how the two halves of the knob come apart. So we'll set that to the side. Now you're going to have the latch, which is what actually latches the door or holds the door closed. There's a couple different styles. You might find one that is attached with two screws here, a bigger plate and two screws, so you would take the screws out and the whole thing would come out. This one here is just a friction fit. It's getting to be quite common now, and really the easiest way to do this is use your screwdriver right in behind the latch itself, right on the back side, and you're basically just pulling it towards yourself until it pops out. And that's all there is to taking the knob out. So we've got that. Next thing we're going to do is actually remove the door itself. And what you'll find on the back side is you'll find 2 or 3 hinges, and the hinges, the two halves of the hinges are held together with a pin. So in this case our pin's already sticking up a little bit, so I can get my little red bar in there likely and get it apart. If it wasn't, you could use an end of a screwdriver or something and bang up here on the end of the pin, which would raise it up. Like I said, in this case I think it's up high enough to get a hold of it. Just a sec. Okay, so we got that one started. I'm going to go down to the bottom one and do the same thing. This one here actually isn't started enough, so I'm going to take one of my bits from my screwdriver, stick it up here in the bottom, give it a few taps. You can see how it started to come up pretty easy, this one. And this one was easy enough. I can probably just hook the hooked end of my bar on there and pull the pin out just like so. Now you can see I've kind of got the door partially closed, so it's kind of holding itself in there, even with that one pin out. Now when I pull this one out, the door is going to want to come away. So I've got the knob out of here, so I can kind of hook a couple fingers in and pull this pin out. And then the door, just grab a hold of the door, give it a bit of a wiggle, and it pops out of the hinges like that. Okay, so I'm systematically taking it apart. It just is easier to manhandle if we've got it in a couple different pieces. So I'm going to set this out in the hallway. Some doors, when you're removing them, like there's a lot of people that still like the oak door look. You know, if you have a local recycling center or reuse it center, and if you can get the doors and frames apart without destroying them, chances are you could take them down there and somebody might be able to reuse them. So now we're down to the frame here. So there's a couple different ways you can do this. The frame should be nailed through the frame into the actual framework of the house, and generally you can just get your hammer or bar in there and start to pry this apart, and you can see that this one is coming apart. Just watch your flooring down here, that you don't, you know, if it's hardwoods or something, you don't scratch it. In this case we've got carpet. I just got to try to make sure it doesn't wrinkle up. Shims are starting to fall out of there. So we've exposed these nails here. I'm going to do the same thing over on the other side. You may find on the hinge side that the screws from the hinges are threaded right into the wood in behind. These ones are not, but just look for that if you're having trouble getting it to pry away. That could be the culprit. Need my bar. This one's a little tighter. There it comes. Okay, so we've got a good start to it. Again, we're just watching the flooring down here. This door frame is down inside of the carpet, so we don't want to pry it too far. About like so should do it. So the next thing I'm going to do is take a hacksaw and try to cut those nails off. Actually, you can use a hacksaw, but I'm just going to use a bar and bend those nails at the back until they either break or fold over and pull out. So this might be a little loud. So there's one. Two. Okay, I'll get the ones on the other side, and then there'll be two really high up. If you had a reciprocating saw, you could just run the blade of it through there as well. Okay, so we've got two up really high here. Don't know if I can get in there. I can get that one. One more. Okay, so it should be free now. So there, we've got our frame out. You can see we've got some nails sticking out through the back side there. I'm just going to take, if you're just throwing these out, you know, it's not going to be any big deal, but I'm just going to pull these right through here. Oh, maybe I won't. Just get them to break off, like so. The reason I can't tap them with the hammer and out the other side is the door stop is nailed over top of where these nails would have been put in. So I can't just bang them out there because that's in the way. So I'll just bend the rest of those over so nobody gets poked. Actually, they're all pretty good. And I'll set this frame out of the way too. Alright, so we've got the basic part of the frame and door out of the way. Now we're going to go around and clean the door frame up a little bit, the door opening. We've got the ends of a couple nails sticking out here, so we're going to get rid of them, just so they don't impede our process of installing the new door. Okay, so I think I've got all the nails out. And just double check that your drywall is trimmed at least flush or even slightly back from the, oh, there's another nail, or just slightly back from the framing here. And that, the only reason for that is just to be sure that it doesn't impede sliding your new door in there. This side here I've got a couple spots that are a little long, so I'm just going to trim this off with my utility knife. It's not much, but every little bit sometimes helps. So. This is definitely a do-it-yourselfer project. You know, sometimes your walls or your frames can be twisted a little bit, and it takes a little more messing around to get it in there right, but most do-it-yourselfers with a little bit of confidence can do this type of job. Okay, so we got the opening straightened away there. I'm just going to get rid of all this garbage out of the way. First thing I'm going to do is bring the whole door and frame over, fit it into the opening, and just, you know, make sure that everything is going to work the way I wanted it to. Just before that, I'm going to just see how plumb both sides of the framework are, so I know what I'm kind of up against here. This one's got a bit of a bow in the center. That's the hinge side. This one's a bit out of whack too, so hopefully we got enough width there to get this in there nicely. So I'm going to remove any of the packing hardware on this new door, which on this one it had a couple of protective skids kind of nailed on the bottom of the frame just for shipping so that it didn't get bashed up. So we pulled those off already. The door's got a couple coats of paint on it already. It didn't come this way. The painter gave it a bit of a shot to get it started. This one also has some hardware right here that's basically just holding the door closed for shipping. Some of them just pull out. This one here actually unthreads. And the other piece comes out of the knob hole. So we don't need any of that for the actual finished door. So I'm just going to wiggle this into the opening. Now, it's sometimes helpful to have somebody with you to help you for this part, just so the door doesn't fall over. In this case, this one's staying in there fairly decently. So I don't know if the camera comes over here, you can kind of see a little better. Right now, just the way it's standing in here, I'm tight here, and I've got about a ½ inch or 3/4 of an inch back there. Now, we need that play so that I can use wooden shims to get everything sitting in here straight. So if I pulled it tight this way, I think the camera can probably see that there's a bit of space there. Like I said, we're going to the door will roughly end up being pretty centered once we're done. But so the first thing I want to do is start with my hinge side. Now, when I initially put my level on the framework here, I could see that the center of the framework is actually bulged into the opening a little bit here. So I know that I for sure need some shimming at the top and the bottom, and not nearly as much in the center. So what I'm going to start out with is, I can open this up. You can remove the door as well if you want to. Most times you can do it with the door hanging there, but I've got a box of shims here cut up. You can buy pre-made shims. I just buy second or third grade cedar shingles, take them to the table saw, and I like 1.5 inch. I cut them to 1.5 inch wide, and you can see with the taper on there that it gives you quite a variety of ability to wedge that in there and get different thicknesses. So I just make my own up. It's actually a little cheaper if you're going to use enough of them, just to buy a bundle of shingles. And what I'm going to do is start out by shimming the head jamb on both sides, just to kind of tighten it up. This is where two people comes in. A lot handier. Might take me a little screwing around here to get this to work. Yeah, that's working really good. If I can get one side to stay. Okay, screw it. I'm going to take the door off, and then I've just got the frame to deal with. So I can, this one's got 3 hinges, so I'll pop the pins out of the door. Okay, we got the door out of the way now. So now I just don't have to fight around it. Find my shims that I started out with. So as I said before, we just want to shim it from one side to the other so that we don't have to fight, hopefully. Okay, there we go. So now that I've got it kind of standing there roughly in place, I can double check with my level to see if that position of the header is going to work out for us. I think we're going to be all right. Yeah, we should be okay there. Sometimes you'll have to shift, maybe tighter to one side than the other, or whatever to make that work. But we should be all right there. The other thing we need to check is how level the header is. Yeah, and see, well, you won't be able to see that, but I need to bring the one side up in order to level this out. The problem being that when you're in an existing area, you're not working right off the level floor. You may have carpeting or hardwood or something in there that's, can throw that out a little bit. So as long as I've got enough thickness of carpet here, I can bring this one side up some. And if I don't, then I may have to cut off the taller side. So we'll just see once I get this in here. And I'm really just taking a piece of shim, sticking it in there underneath. Just rechecking. Slide this side down into the carpet a little bit. It's actually down about as low as it can go, so I'll see if I can come up a little higher here. And we're doing this all without any nails or anything yet, because we don't really want to nail anything till we know that we've got it going in the right direction. So we've got it leveled out pretty good. There's a bit of an indent in the carpet from the old frame here, but I think once that carpet springs back a bit, in fact I think the floors here are being changed anyways. That all looks good. We're good there. So once we kind of basically know we're in the right area and that all the shimming and everything's going to work out, we can finally take this hinge side, shim it all straight, fasten it, and then we'll do the other side. So I believe I can leave my top the way it is, the way I've got it shimmed. I'm just checking with the level. I've got to bring the bottom out a fair bit. Now I've got this is a fairly long level. This level is actually made for doing doors. That's why it's over 6 feet tall. You know, if you've got a 4-foot level, that would work. If you've got a shorter one, it'll work, but it's going to take more messing around because you're going to, with a short one like this, 24-inch, you're going to have to level, you know, down to this point, shim it out. From there, you know, you're going to have to do it 3 or 4 places, and it's just going to take you a little more time. Where with the long one, I know the top's good. I'm going to shim the bottom out to where it needs to be, and then I just use the level basically as a straight edge and throw some more shims in the center areas until the frame pushes out to the level. Just less messing around if you've got the longer level. So I'm trying to stick a shim in from each side to create a flat surface. And while we're really close right there, I just need to go a little more. And you're also trying to keep this level flush with the drywall on both sides. Sometimes it may be out a little bit one way or the other, so you just have to kind of split the difference and make it sit the best it will. I think we're going to be real close here. Just a little bit more and then we should be good. Something like that. Yeah, that's good there. I've got the bubble right centered between the lines. Some people think it's good enough to just have the bubble between the lines and then you're all right, but that's not true. You want to actually center that bubble as close as you can between the 2 lines. Depending on the level, just because the bubble's between the lines, it could be out in 6 feet like that. It could be out 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 of an inch still from actual plumb. Okay, so we've got that part done. I'm going to grab some more shims. You're going to need a fair amount of shims. You're going to need a dozen or so, at least. So like I said, now that because I've got this long level that acts as a straight edge, I can place it on here, and I want to put shims behind each hinge, which in this case there's 3, and shim that frame out tight to the level so that it's straight. I already know that it's plumb, the way the level's sitting, but I just need to get it straight as well. So I'm just going to do that at each hinge, and the reason we do it at each hinge is just to give it a little bit of support there, because that's where the weight of the door is going to hang. Like so. So I'm just snugging them in there, and I'll double check it. And when I'm looking there, looks nice and tight. Actually, I might have this one just a little bit pushed out too much. Okay, so it looks like I'm going to have to start nailing a little bit in order to hold the shims in. So we know our top 2 are good, so I'm going to get the brad nailer. And I'm just reconfirming that the frame's pretty flush to the drywall on both sides, and it is. Now on this particular frame, this frame's a little different. It's actually, the frame is made out of a solid stock of wood, and it's got a rabbet or a groove cut out of it here for the door. A lot of other frames I've seen, most of the other frames I've seen, it's a piece of wood, and then we would add a door stop on here, which the door closes up against. So in those cases, I place my nails or screws right behind where that strip of wood is going to be attached, so they're hidden. In this case, we don't have that luxury, so anything we fasten this with has to be filled in and repainted after. So now I want to go and nail through the shims that I know are in the right spot, and I'm using 2-inch brad nails here. Stick a couple in there. A couple in there. Now this is the one that I needed a little adjustment on. I think I had it out a little too far. Yeah. I think I'm going to have to go down to one shim on that one. There, that's better there. So I will attach that one in there. Oops. Double check it. That should be good, and it's good the rest of the way down. So. Okay, so we've got that side attached there. I'm going to double check that the header is still level. And actually it isn't. It's got to come up a little bit again. Oh, I see it slipped off the shim here when I was moving it around. There we go, we're back to good. So I know that my height is good, I'm level. I'm just checking here that I'm flush on both sides, which looks pretty good. We had that shim in at the top, so I can nail that side. Okay, now there's two ways that you can go about doing this next step. Quiet that compressor down a little bit. So on a lighter door, this door's pretty heavy. On a lighter door, usually what I would do is rehang the door, close it, and then just look at the gap that's left and adjust my shims accordingly to how the door is to create an equal gap. The other way you can do this is, we know this side's plumb. We know we've got this nailed. Now it's just a matter of making this side plumb. So really we can just follow the same process that we did for the other side using the level, which was we've got our top fixed, find our position for our bottom, put a shim in there, and then shim the center straight. So that's what we're going to do. Actually, I'm pretty good even without a shim there. Looks like it's going to be pretty darn close. So I'm going to nail that bottom. It appears we don't even need a shim down there. The opening's just big enough. Okay, so we've got that. And again, I'll just use my level as a straight edge and shim the frame out to it, which isn't going to take very much. And here, for sure, you want to get a shim behind the latch, where the latch goes on the door, like so. That one's a little thick. We'll try this thinner one, like that. That looks pretty good, just like so. Couple nails in there. Okay, so we've got it kind of fastened in 3 points on that side. I'm going to rehang the door, swing the door, and just make sure it's not rubbing anywhere, and make any final adjustments that I need from that point. So I'll just rehang the door here. I'm going to bring it around. I want to get the pins handy in my hand. And I'm going to start by hanging or inserting the top hinge. Once I have it slid into place, I want to drop a pin in. Get it started. I'll just work my way down the door. Okay, so I'm just going to tap those in 3/4 of the way. I'm just leaving them up a little bit so they're easier to get out if we have to remove them. So, I'm rubbing on. I don't have this door hung routed in the frame very well. It's actually a little too tight to the top. So it's rubbing across the top, so we may have to adjust that a little bit. But for right now I've got it closed and I'm just looking at my gap here. And I can bring, actually my center's pretty good. If anything, I'm going to actually readjust my top on that side a little bit. Oh, I see what's wrong. This hinge isn't, they don't have this hinge screwed in here tight maybe. These particular doors came from the manufacturer all hanging. It looks like maybe they just don't have the hinges tight there. You can actually see the screws are, I don't know, they're really crooked, but I'm hoping I can tighten that up a little bit. That one was really loose. Yeah, some of these aren't very tight. See if that makes a difference. So it's still rubbing on the top, but that made our tightening that hinge up pull the top of the door over, which is what we needed. So that looks a lot better on our sides than that. We just have a bit of a problem on the top. So we may have to take this door off. Well, we will have to take the door off and plane the top of the door off. Because what's happened is whoever made these doors routed the door wrong, so that the door is actually a little too tight. You can't even see a space. You could probably hear as I was trying to close it how tight it is up at the top. So I'm going to have to pop that off and plane the door down. Hopefully you don't have to do that because it's a real pain in the butt. But other than that, our clearances and everything on the door look pretty good. So I'm going to just kind of continue on as if the door is fitting fine. Basically the next step is we've got that side hinged. We're going to stick a couple more shims in here. We don't have to push the frame in though, so I'm just going to shim it and nail it there, and then we're going to trim all the shims off. So we're just snugging that one up. And I'm about halfway between the latch and the header. I put that one. This one here, we're going to be about halfway between the latch and the bottom. Like that. Okay, and that should hold our door in secure. Once you put your trim on, it'll be nailed into the edge of the frame and into the wall. That will also help stabilize the door frame. So we've got the frame all in. I'm just going to take my utility knife, cut flush along all those shims, and trim off this excess that we obviously don't need sticking through the wall like that. So you want to cut them off flush or even back in there a little bit if you can get your blade in there. That way they won't interfere with the trim when you go to put the trim on. And usually with these cedar shims, a couple scores with the knife, they break off pretty good unless you're in the real thick part of the shim. Okay, so we got that all off. The other side I'll have to trim off still. If this was the other type of door frame that I was explaining to you before, where you've got to add the door stop on here to finish the door off, what you would do at this point is you would install the door hardware and the striker plate. You'd be standing on the other side of the door in this case. You'd close the door to where it's sitting nice and flush, and then on the other side you would slide that door stop into place up against the door and nail it with the brad nailer about every 12 inches or so. So that would be a door stop on the latch side and on the hinge side. The one on the hinge side, the door automatically lines itself up because it's got the hinges holding it in place, right? So that one there, I usually try not to let it go right up against the door when I nail it. If you put it up tight, what usually happens once you paint the door is when you open the door rubs on there and it squeaks. So it's more cosmetic on that side because the door can't push in because of the hinges. So just leave it, a 1/16 of an inch away or so from the door. That way you won't get that rubbing, squeaking sound as you paint it. This side, it can be tight against there because the door swings immediately away from it. So, okay, so I'm going to trim these outside shims off. I don't think I need to show you how to do that. Basically, I would be trimming these off. On these doors, I'm going to fill these holes with some paintable spackle, and the painter will paint the door and frame all up again, and then it's ready for hardware and trim. So other than a couple little issues we had, like I said, I've still got to get the planer in here and trim that door off, then it won't rub and it'll swing nice. But other than those couple issues, it went generally pretty smooth. For a first timer, I would expect that removing the door and installing the new one and everything, it's probably going to take you 2.5 hours possibly to do your first couple. And once you've done a few, it's going to get very repetitive. And as long as you have no problems, hour and a half, you should be able to just about do it start to finish once you've done a few. So I wouldn't suspect you'll have a lot of issues. I think that's all I can show you about that. So as I've told you all before, we do have the forum that you can go to on the website at houseimprovements.com. So if you want to go there, you have any questions about this project or really any other project you have going on in the house and you're maybe stuck with or just not sure which way to go next, go there and ask the question and I'll try to get back to you right away. Other than that, we do have other videos up online, so you can go to our YouTube site as well, and you can check us out and see what all else is on there that might help you out in your renos.